Good morning. Today is Saturday, February the 1st, and I'm your host, Donna Smirniotopoulos. Welcome to another episode of Angry Taxpayer. Today, I want to talk about a burning subject for all of you. I'm sure that you're up nights talking about drag queen story time. I know I am. I know that my children are. And so we're going to tear this one down and see if we can figure out what's going on here, why there's controversy associated with it, and why there's a lot of headbanging in both directions. So for the second time, the Norwalk Public Library hosted drag queen story time or drag queen storytelling, I'm not sure which of those it is, last Sunday. And according to Bob Duff, who promoted it on his official Bob Duff Senate Majority Leader Facebook page, it was extremely well attended, standing room only, and all the little kiddies had a great time. The co-sponsor of the event is Troop 429. For those of you who don't know, Troop 429 advertises itself as the only LGBTQ bar between New York City and New Haven. So I think somewhat filling the void that was created when the Cedarbrook closed. And I was very familiar with the Cedarbrook. I went there a few times. It was a great kind of a divey gay bar, and was considered the oldest gay bar in the state of Connecticut. They closed, unfortunately, a few years ago. I actually was friends with the daughter of one of the owners there. So Troop came in, saw that Norwalk was a gay-friendly community, which it is, and I think that's a good thing. And they opened this bar, and I think that they've had pretty decent business. So they have partnered with the Norwalk Public Library to offer this event that, has become a little bit controversial, and we're going to get into why it's been controversial and why both sides are, really, neither side is totally right about this, and we're going to talk about why neither side is right. Now, I've seen some people who object to this, and they go the extra step to say that there's something sick and twisted about drag. And I disagree. It's a very old art form. I have been to a few drag shows. They're extremely entertaining. But I will say this is adult entertainment. This is not children's entertainment. Drag shows are adult entertainment the same way that a stripper or a pole dancer is adult entertainment. It's bawdy, it's lewd, there's a lot of sexual innuendo. That is part of the art form. There's a lot of lip syncing, and I've been to the shows, and they're great fun, but they should be for adults. Nevertheless, there's no reason for people who object to this particular event to get ugly. You're certainly entitled to your opinions, but I think if you're coming at this from a Christian's perspective, which many of the protesters were, the message of Christianity is that we should love one another. And so you need to come at this from a position of love, that we love our fellow brothers and sisters, and we need to understand them. And there was a little bit of a lack of understanding on the part of the people who don't like this particular event. And so it's one thing to object to the event, and it's another thing to go after the individuals who are the individual drag performers who performed. Anita Manager, and that's a play on I Need a Manager, and Robin Fierce. And I saw an interview that was on Nancy O'Norwick with Robin Fierce, and Robin Fierce seems genuinely warm and believes in, and I don't know if Robin uses male or female pronouns, so I'm going to assume female, that Robin believes in the value of drag queen story time. And she believes that this is a good message to send children of tolerance and accepting oneself, no matter how you were born and no matter what makes you different from someone else. And that's a commendable message. I think we can agree that self-acceptance is generally a good thing. Here's where it gets a little bit tricky for me. Most of what I've seen in the aftermath of this event has been backlash directed at the protesters from individuals who either attended the event or support the idea of drag queen story time. So what you have here is an event that is touted as a platform for teaching children about inclusion and tolerance. And you have a bunch of adults being non-inclusive and intolerant of those whose opinions differ from their own. And they don't even see their own hypocrisy. I mean, this is part of what makes this so ripe for conversation, is that it isn't okay to object to this. And if you do object to it, you're called all kinds of terrible names. You're called a homophobe and a racist, and whatever bad name they can give you, they're going to give you, because that's where we've gone with so-called progressive thought over the past 3 years, really since Hillary lost. The progressives have become increasingly intolerant of anyone who doesn't agree with them, and Drag Queen Storytime is a great place to look at this phenomena of intolerance from the left. Now, there's a word for intolerance for those with differing opinions, and that word is bigot. So someone who rejects your opinions and tries to shut you down because they disagree with your opinions, that person is a bigot. So we're seeing, ironically here, progressives on the left, social progressives, who are bigots because of the way they characterize those who object to drag queen storytelling. I'm going to tell you why I object to it. I don't have a problem with drag as an art form. I don't have a problem with adult entertainment for adults. I love the library. Who doesn't love the library? The problem is when you put all these things together, you create conflict of interest. So we have a public library that is funded through tax dollars. This is not a private enterprise. This is public, and we pay for it. And you have a co-sponsor that owns a gay bar. The only, this is their own marketing language, the only LGBTQ positive or LGBTQ plus friendly bar between New York City and New Haven. So I think they're kind of filling the void created when Cedarbrook closed. But they have drag performers, which I don't remember if Cedarbrook had drag. Not when I went there. Cedarbrook was kind of a dive bar, and there's a very different feeling at Troop, and it's a popular place and people love it, and good for them that they have a thriving business. But it's always a little tricky when private and public partner to do something, because on a certain level, what you have here are adult entertainers reading to 3 to 8-year-olds, and these same adult entertainers are employed at the bar down the street. So I think it was a wrong decision of the library to partner with Troop. I think if Troop wants to do this, they should do it on their own property or pay to rent a space to do it. It shouldn't be done at the public library. Now, as far as the propriety of drag queens performing for children, this is my opinion, and I'm entitled to my opinion, and it doesn't mean that I'm intolerant. I like drag. It's adult entertainment. It's not for kids, and certainly not for children as young as 3. I watched the video, and there were children younger than 3. There were children just toddling around. And I think, yes, the parents are the ones who made the decision to bring their children there. But I also have to question the wisdom of the library, thinking that there is some benefit and that the cons don't outweigh the pros. In this case, my feeling is that it's not appropriate. There is plenty of time for children to learn about sexuality, about sexual orientation, about gender, whether you see it as gender fluidity, whether we should be open-minded to different gender expressions. There's plenty of time to do that, and 3 to 8 isn't that time. I mean, I feel that pretty. You're not going to teach 3-year-olds about prostitutes and strippers. You're just not. So why this is okay, I don't know. I think there are plenty of ways to teach tolerance to the very young. I don't think this is the way to do it, because there's a sexual component to this that these young kids are not ready for. So I live in South Norwalk. I live in the Shorefront Park neighborhood of South Norwalk. It's a really nice neighborhood. It's a walkabout neighborhood. And the neighborhood is very attractive to families in the area in South Norwalk who are looking for a walkabout neighborhood for trick-or-treating. And we love it. We love to decorate. I have a friend who is always here with me at Halloween, and he dresses as Michael Myers from the Halloween movies. And, he's got the jumpsuit and he has the mask and he even has a big plastic knife. So we're very careful. We watch as the children approach the house, and he will only answer the door with the mask on if these are reasonably grown children who want to be scared because it's Halloween. So, basically his threshold is 8, 10, 12. Those kids can handle it. He won't do this if there's a young child at the door. Why? Because it's too freaking scary, all right? Why would we want to scare and confuse the children? So, I'm sure many of my listeners have children who were or are afraid of clowns. We call it clownstrophobia. There's actually a movie called Clownstrophobia. My son, when he was 18 months old, I took him to the Ringling Brothers Circus in New Jersey, and he started to have high anxiety because of the clowns. And there is a disconnect. There's something uncanny about people who present one way, which is the happy, smiling grease paint of the clown, but who behind the grease paint are something else. And children actually are very sensitive to these disconnects. And I believe that children, very young children, seeing someone in drag may be confused. They may find it confusing. And so I'm not really getting where the net positive is here for these children. It's normal for children to this is not about, our socially putting people into categories. 99.9% of us are born either male or female. And anyone who's ever had a child knows that kids are invested in their own anatomies and the anatomies of everybody else. And they want to be able to, this is a mommy and this is a daddy. This is the most normal thing in the world. There's nothing objectionable about that. This is how most of us are made and most of us are built. And so why do we need to start introducing all these variables at a very young age? There's plenty of time for them to learn about that. If your particular child has ambiguous genitalia, it's extremely rare, but you might want to have a conversation with that child. But to make this, full-scale educational platform, I think is kind of nutty given the age range of the children. But where it gets really interesting for me is when I start to look into the language of the people who they're not necessarily defending drag queen story time so much as attacking the people who don't like it. And here's where their bigotry and their intolerance comes out. There is, Nancy Norwalk has a message board. Her messages are off lately, but this particular event generated some clicks. And one poster, unsurprisingly, is one of her board members, John Levin. And John, unsurprisingly, wrote the following: "What a great event for Norwalk, its children and families. Even with the Westboro Baptist creep show outside, both my kids would have loved this. Next time." Well, if I'm not mistaken, both his kids are well outside the suggested age range for this. Let's just start there. But Westboro Baptist creep show? Really, John? Really? Do you think that's fair? And then when he got called on it by the priest from St. Mary's, who said we weren't a Baptist church, and mentioned how many there were, he kind of doubled down on his defensive posturing, and he said, he was responding to Father Closter, well, either you don't understand metaphor, or I was simply too subtle. Maybe search Westboro Baptist. This is a completely unfair comparison. It is not even useful for the purposes of satire or parody. Westboro, they would, for those of you who don't know, they would protest at the funerals of our servicemen and women. And they would say that these young people died because of homosexuality, that this was a direct result of our sinful culture in this country, okay? So to liken a local Catholic church to Westboro and to call it a creep show, really unfair, really below the belt. And John is a smart man and a sensitive man, and I think he can do better. But then to double down and defend it is even worse. So, just for the record, John, and anybody else who's listening, Westboro has not only gone after homosexuals, they've gone after Catholics, they've gone after the Orthodox community, they go after everybody, okay? So this is completely a cheap shot, and nobody called him on it. I would have, except Nancy banned me, I don't know, going on 2 years now. So, but I welcome my listeners to go on there and call John Levin out on this cheap shot against St. Mary's Catholic Church. John goes on to write regarding 80 people, does the quantity of people praying affect the outcome they seek, or is this intended to simply help the people engaging in the activity feel better about themselves? If it's the former, please consider praying for peace and tolerance in our world, ? Now, interestingly, Senator Duff, when he was promoting this event, he said, standing room only, it was, sold out show, whatever. So he's obviously using the number of people in attendance as a validation. Okay, so how come it's okay for the people who supported Drag Queen Storytime, but it's not okay for the people who opposed it to talk about how many their numbers were? And also, why are we so confused about tolerance? Why is this such a confusing idea for people? And why is it that when you object to an event because you believe it's inappropriate for children to be exposed to adult sexuality, why are you then labeled as intolerant? I'm not getting it. Marjorie M, not her name, this is somebody who works for the public schools. We haven't figured out this one yet. And since I'm not on Nancy, I can speculate all I want. Marjorie M wrote, the drag queens were there to inspire a love of reading. No, they weren't. That's bullshit. And to acquaint children with the beauty of diversity. Again, there's plenty of time to do that when they're older and they're old enough to understand what's going on. And if you look at the video, you can see that these kids, they were tiny, they were toddlers, and I think way too confusing and way too adult for them to benefit. And then she writes, if Marjorie's a she, shame on those who fear people who are different from themselves. Step out of your comfort zone and talk with this wonderful community. You might learn how sensitive, loving, and special people who are different can be. And I don't disagree with that sentiment, actually. I just think that she's applied it incorrectly here. So the Christian message is one of love, that we all love one another, which means that the protesters, if they were expressing hateful thoughts towards the performers, that's bad. We should always come from a position of love. That doesn't mean we have to like everything. It doesn't mean we have to say yes to everything. And we shouldn't be afraid to say no because somebody's going to point a finger and say, you're a bigot. And we know it's been happening to me. Somebody called me a racist yesterday because I don't support school regionalization. I'm not really sure how you go from opposing regionalization to racist, but this is sort of the world we live in. I do think it helps to take a step back to really give these things some thought. I hope you found this somewhat informative. It's a little different. It isn't just news delivery here. I was talking about how we view certain things and why it's okay for us to have different points of view. I think that reasonable people can disagree reasonably. Welcome to February. Tomorrow is Groundhog's Day. Let's pray that the little sucker does not see his shadow. I think that's what means that winter's over, so let's hope that he doesn't see his shadow. And ta-ta for now. See you again soon. Please write to me at savenorwalknow@gmail.com. I invite you to like the channel, to subscribe to the channel. I also have a couple Facebook pages that I welcome you to view. The first one is Norwalk, Nor-WOKE. And I started a new one, which is a parody site, Westport Women Funding Norwalk Education. And then I administrate Norwalk, Connecticut Politics. So please visit these pages and ta-ta for now. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the Super Bowl.